When I was asked to take on the role of ambassador for the reading agency, it was something that I really, really wanted to do because obviously I'm a writer and reading's such a big part of my life. I think the wonderful thing about the reading agency is to introduce people who wouldn't maybe normally pick up a book into, enjoying actually sitting down and reading something. And the internet and Kindles and everything, are fantastic. Television's fantastic. But when you actually read a book, you have to picture it all in your own mind. No one's telling you what you're seeing or what you should be feeling. And I think that's the secret of reading a book. It's such a personal thing. I think the wonderful thing about the 6-book challenge is that, people who wouldn't normally pick up a huge big book and read it, or hasn't, doesn't think that reading is going to be sort of like that bag or whatever. I think to look for 6 books for yourself, to, something that you will find interesting, find your own medium, what kind of books you like. I chose as one of my 6-book challenge, I picked Spike Milligan's Small Dreams of a Scorpion, because I think some people would be better off starting with maybe humorous poetry and a small book before they pick up Gone with the Wind or Trial and Punishment or Crime and Punishment or something like that. So I think the really great thing about it is people can read the blurb on the back of the books. Will this interest me? Is it something that I like? Is it something that, I want to know more about? And then they can, read from there. I am a writer, as we all know, but I'm also a really big reader. I have, on average, 3 books on the go at all times. I have 1 in my bedroom, 1 downstairs in my lounge, and I always have a book in the bathroom. And believe it or not, I lay in the bath reading Ellis Peters because I don't know, it just suits me for the bath. I like to read as much as I can. I read every available moment because for me a book is such a personal thing. You can read a book on top of Mount Kilimanjaro. I remember reading Out of Africa by Karen Blixen while I was sitting around a watering hole in Tanzania. It was just fantastic because I was reading about where I was. A couple of years ago, I read a book called White Oleander when I was working out in LA. And it was fantastic to read this book, get into this world, and I was driving those streets every afternoon, while we were filming. It was fantastic. So, for me, a book is a very, very big part of my life, and I can't imagine ever going to sleep without at least reading at least 1 chapter of someone's book. When I used to first work in the prisons years ago, and I used to work in Belmarsh, a lot of especially the young lifers in there, especially the young men, they'd say to me, I've never read a book in my life, Martina, blah, blah, blah. And I'd say the same thing to all of them. The one thing you need to read is time, and you've got all the time in the world. So I'd say to them, try it off with something. Try off with an easy book, go to the prison library, find a book that isn't too big, or get someone to recommend it to you. And the really great thing was that a lot of these young fellas would then go on to do the basic literacy classes, so that they could learn to read better and could learn to write better. I said, even if you only come out of it writing a better letter home, you will get a lot out of, reading a book. And a lot of them as well used to read my books. I mean, my book's the most requested books in the prison system, I know that. They're also the most stolen books from shops. I don't know about that one. But a lot of them would sort of read my books because I was coming in to do a creative writing class. And the one thing that I always loved when I've worked at the prisons is to see the amount of young people, especially, who'd never picked up a book in their life and were suddenly discussing books with me while we were sitting there and saying, I've just read this, I've just read that. And I mean, if you can sit down and read a newspaper, if you can play your way through the Sun or the Mirror, you can certainly play your way through a book. One of the main books that I always used to tell the guys, especially in prison, was Call of the Wild, Jack London. When I was a child, it was a book that made me want to travel. It's one of the most fantastic books, and it takes you through Alaska. It takes you through all these countries and these wonderful experiences through the eyes of a dog, believe it or not. And it just completely blew me away when I was young. And I read it again recently, I'd say, for any age. One of the other books that I chose was To Kill a Mockingbird, which I think some people might think would be maybe quite a difficult book because it's so well known, Harper Lee's Kill a Mockingbird. I made my son read it when he was 13 because he'd been a bit naughty. And I said to him, no, you're having no television, you're having nothing. And I gave him To Kill a Mockingbird to read. And he said, well, I don't want to read that. I want to read my own book. And I said to him, you're going to read that book, and then I'm going to ask you about it later on, and you better have read it. And then he came down, I'll never forget it, he came down for his dinner that evening and he said to me, who left the chewing gum man? Mum, was it like Bo Radley? So I think it's a wonderful first book for anybody, man or woman, to read. It's got a wonderful message. It's very well written. It's very easy to understand. And it's just the most fantastic read. It's a wonderful journey, and I would, I'd recommend it to anybody. I think you should read Martina Cole books, my books, where if you don't mind bad language and you don't mind a bit of violence, then I think you when you're ready to read Martina Cole, that's when you are ready. So if you don't mind them, my books aren't for the faint-hearted, are they? But do you know one thing I have noticed, though? Oftentimes on signings over the last 20 years, people have said to me, I don't read anyone else, I only read you. And then I recommend them other people to read. And I think that's one thing, whatever people think. I know I don't write literature. I've never pretended to write literature. But I do love to think that people who would never normally have picked a book up will pick up my books. And especially after we put The Take on television, the amount of young men who turned up on signings saying, I've never read a book in my life, but I watched The Take and now I'm reading The Life, or I'm reading Lady Killers, or I'm reading one of your other books. And then I go on and say to him, right, read Val McDermott if you like that. Read Ian Rankin. Ian Rankin's one of the best people. If you first want to read a really good book, a detective book, read Rebus, because Ian writes in such a wonderful way. And I would say, find your genre. If you like crime, get a crime book, If you like romance, find a romance book.